Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Chantel Cameron says, Katie Taylor can't hurt me. I'm going to be a lot more aggressive in the rematch.
I'm scared for Katie.
I don't think it was that much of a close fight where it needed a rematch, to be honest, said Cameron. There were a few close rounds, but I comfortably won. I've done it once, I've got to do it again and prove it wasn't just an off night for Katie. But I wasn't at my best either. That's what motivates me. Me and Jamie have said multiple times, 3-minute rounds would suit me. That would be insane if me and Katie did that in Dublin. If Serrano's pushing it, why can't we? I don't think I got the recognition for beating Katie. This is still Katie's show. It's her homecoming again. But it was important for me to have the ring walk second. The first one was a long time. I was waiting in the ring for ages.
When the fight started, you saw Katie Taylor circling away from Chantel as Chantel attempted to walk her down. And because Chantel is a little taller and a little longer,
working off the counter didn't work for Katie Taylor.
Nope.
Trying to walk Chantel Cameron into punches didn't work because Chantel's straight punches from the outside coming in.
Jabbing her way in.
Chantel Cameron had Katie Taylor under a lot of pressure in spite of Chantel Cameron not being a pressure fighter. There is a difference between a boxer-puncher applying pressure and an, according to Hoyle, pressure fighter. Chantel's a boxer-puncher, a mean one.
She can apply pressure,
but in an educated way. She's not throwing caution to the wind. She's still jabbing her way in.
Coming in behind her jab.
Putting punches together. This fight is going to be completely different. As much as I respect Katie outside of the ring, inside those ropes, there's zero respect. I have a bit of spike for this, and I'm going in there to cause damage. I know how to beat Katie. I know she can't hurt me. I'm bigger, stronger, and I'm going to be a lot more aggressive.
Katie Taylor had the most success when she decided to stand her ground and trade punches with Chantel Cameron because in the pocket, Katie is faster.
And she may have some success with that in the rematch, though you have to figure if she starts off with that, the pace is going to catch up to her.
You start off trading punches in the pocket.
As much as it pains me to say this, I don't know that Katie Taylor can win the second fight. I don't know that she can win the rematch. Chantel Cameron.
It wasn't a fluke.
I don't chalk it up to being an off night for Katie Taylor. I don't chalk it up to any one thing, just one thing. It's several things. For a long time now, Chantel Cameron.
She's good.
She's fundamentally sound, bigger, younger, and stronger.
A little taller and a little longer.
Some years younger. This isn't Lennox Lewis's shock upset loss to Hasim Rahman or Anthony Joshua's shock upset loss to Andy Ruiz. This ain't like that.
I don't know what the plan of action is for Katie Taylor.
I don't know what the plan of action is. Chantel Cameron offers up so much, and if nothing else, she's durable. She's been in there with the hard-punching Jessica McCaskill, Mary McGee. These are hard punchers, very hard punchers, harder punchers than Katie Taylor. And if they couldn't put a dent in Chantel Cameron, how's Katie gonna do it?
Hindsight is 20/20.
You look at that first fight, you look at that performance, and you ask yourself, what can Katie Taylor do differently? What exactly?
It's a strategy.
Katie Taylor, never being one to shy away from a challenge, I don't think there's any shame in her perhaps capping off her career off 2 back-to-back losses to Chantel Cameron. There's no shame in that. If anything, it's a testament to the fighter that Katie Taylor has been, that she don't duck no smoke.
Chantel Cameron's wanted this fight for years, and eventually she got it.
Katie Taylor took on most, if not all, of the relevant fighters anywhere at or around these weights, but this time it backfired. Could it be that Father Time has caught up to her, or is it just that Chantel's that good? Is it a combination of both?
It could be.
Katie Taylor has been amazing. Amazing for the sport and amazing to watch in action. But the bane of an ambitious fighter, a legacy fighter like a Katie Taylor, is that sooner or later you're going to get beat. Sooner or later you're going to run into somebody.
You're always fighting good fighters. Sooner or later, one of those good fighters is going to beat you.
And obviously, there's no shame in that. I don't know what Katie Taylor can do differently in a second fight.
Chantel has all the success from the first fight to build off of in the second. But what about Katie? What can she do differently?
It's not looking good. If Chantel Cameron wins the rematch, I anticipate that she might move up in weight up to welter to take on the winner of McCaskill versus Ryan, especially if the winner is Sandy Ryan. Her and Chantel, they have some unfinished business, a domestic rivalry. That's if Sandy wins. If Jessica wins, I'm not so sure because Chantel already beat her in lopsided fashion. Maybe they do a rematch?
Maybe.
But if Chantel wins, I don't think she stays at 140 pounds. There's nothing left for her to do there.
Things to consider ahead of this second fight later on this year.
Can Chantel Cameron repeat that performance from the first fight, or will Katie Taylor show her that the old legends got one more big fight and one more big win?
One more.
It's not over.
See what happens.
Men's welterweight news. Keith Thurman says he is aiming for 2 fights and an exhibition next year.
Imagine that, Keith Thurman fighting more than once in the same calendar year.
You want to know how long it's been since he did that? Do you want to know the last time that Keith Thurman fought more than once in one calendar year? That was way back there in 2015.
8 years ago.
Almost a decade. We've just got to wait for this announcement, Thurman told Fight Hub TV when asked about his next fight. They've been playing with my emotions all year, kid.
Oh?
They've been playing with my emotions all year. At this point, it's just going to be about staying busy for the next few years.
Oh?
Getting a bit more activity, Thurman added. I would love to fight once this year since I've been on the bench all year, but when it comes to next year, I gotta stay moving. If I can do 2 fights and an exhibition, 2 fights and a UFC fight, I don't know what's going to happen, but I need to stay busy. Keith Thurman has fought once in the last 3. Going on 4 years. He's fought once, just once, and that was the Mario Barrios fight. He sat out all of 2020, sat out all of 2021, fought only once in 2022.
Looks like he's about to sit out all of 2023.
He's grown so desperate, he's actually entertaining the idea of boxing Clarissa Shields. Clarissa, who initiated this conversation, she started it, but Thurman's actually entertaining it. Keith Thurman appears to appreciate the novelty aspect of fighting someone of the opposite sex. That's my only interest, man, is not just doing big things in boxing, Thurman said, of his interest in exhibitions. Sometimes it's fun to do different things in boxing. Sometimes it's fun to do different things in sports. Sometimes it's fun to do different things compared to what we've seen in the whole world. And a battle of the sexes, when it comes to boxing, would be different.
How the mighty have fallen.
Let's get one thing clear.
What?
That if Keith Thurman really wanted to fight, then he'd be fighting. And it really is as simple as that. I think that Keith Thurman has become too particular over time for his own good. And that's what's been affecting his career. You're not going to tell me
3 years.
in the last 3 years, he's only boxed once. And you're not going to tell me that there was no other alternative, that there was no other opportunity out there for Keith Thurman. There seems to have been a plan in play to put him in the ring with Yordenis Ugas, a battle of the former WBA champions. We heard about it for weeks.
We're not the only ones.
Mario Barrios stated, "We thought we would fight someone else, that Ugas was going to fight Keith Thurman."
I have a sneaking suspicion that Keith Thurman, in perhaps asking for too much money, screwed the pooch and once again benched himself.
For a couple of months, Barrios told BoxingScene.com, "We thought that we were going to be fighting somebody else because we thought Ugas was going to fight Thurman. When I was told it was going to be Ugas again, I said, okay, we went back to what we were working on in the first place. That's just how boxing is sometimes. I was just staying ready, basically." San Antonio's Barrios made sure to avoid overtraining once it became clear he wouldn't box during the summer, as he initially expected. "I think I have a great team," Barrios said. "We all communicate very well."
Back to Thurman.
There seems to have been a plan in play to put Keith Thurman in the ring with Errol Spence Jr., and that plan was in motion late last year, but Errol Spence Jr., he didn't want to go with the plan.
He instead decided to finally box Terrence Crawford.
And the thing about that is, you don't want to get to a point to where you're just an option for some other fighter. You're a contingency. You're a plan B. And I feel that Keith Thurman, in being as particular as he has been the last 5 or 6 years, he's done this to himself.
You're not going to tell me that he had to take 2 years off after the Danny Garcia fight.
And 2 more after the Manny Pacquiao fight. And you're not going to tell me that there was nothing he could do last year. There was no alternative.
He fought Barrios, then he sat out the rest of the year, waiting for Errol.
Think about it this way. Errol Spence Jr. got into that horrific car accident in October of 2019. In December of the following year, he had already returned. He was already back in less time than it took Keith Thurman to come back from the Danny Garcia fight, in less time than it took Keith Thurman to come back from the Pacquiao fight.
4 years squandered.
It didn't take Errol Spence Jr. 2 years or close to it to come back from a horrific car accident. So what's Keith Thurman's excuse? What's his excuse for not being more active, for not fighting? And put simply, I just think he's pricing himself out. I think he's asking for too much money.
That's what it is.
If the guy wanted to fight, if he really wanted to fight and stay sharp, then he'd be fighting.
He would be.
In the time that Keith Thurman's been pricing himself out of fights, Sean Porter crossed over to ESPN. Errol Spence Jr. finally had the Crawford fight. All in the time it's taking Keith Thurman to get back to a regular schedule of activity, and I feel it's nobody's fault but his own.
And if this is a scheduling issue, if there's a scarcity of fight dates at Showtime, okay, you go somewhere else. You go where the opportunities are.
But it's actually not due to a scarcity, not just, or due to a lack of opportunity, it's due to a lack of trying. If Ugas was under the impression that he was going to be fighting Keith Thurman, and Mario Barrios was under that same impression in reference to Ugas versus Thurman, what that tells me is they had a plan in play for Keith.
Ugas said the same thing.
He thought that he was going to be fighting Keith Thurman. That can't be a coincidence.
Keith priced himself out.
If I had to guess what happened, if I had to guess why didn't that fight materialize, my guess would be Keith asked for too much money.
That's worked out beautifully.
Now he's saying he wants to fight 2 times next year, and he means to squeeze in an exhibition match, a battle of the sexes with Clarissa Shields.
Just stop.
But stop this. There's no point in talking about Keith Thurman anymore. Keith Thurman is not relevant to the welterweight division. He's not relevant to the sport of boxing. Anybody interviewing him,
You're wasting your time.
he doesn't fight. He's a fighter who doesn't fight.
You're wasting your time.
Needs to be said. There's no point in talking about Keith Thurman anymore.
His career is all but over.
It's done. And finally, in men's heavyweight news ahead of this weekend's big rematch, Ismail Salas, who trains Joe Joyce, said, not only Joe Joyce, even I overlooked Zhang.
How do you think that happened?
It's gross oversight. I think they underestimated Zhang's power, overestimated Joe's chin.
I think so.
Ismail Salas, who trains Cuban welterweight Yordanis Ugas, promised Joyce's mistakes would be rectified for the rematch. Right now, you know, we are in training camp, Salas told BoxingScene.com. This time, we're doing general preparation. Actually, we're working hard and polishing the mistakes with him. I don't like to take anything away from Zhang. He did a great job. That's why he won. But this time, we go for the winning path. We're correcting all the mistakes we did, and I believe it will be a great fight and that we will be the winners.
If you saw the World Series of Boxing years ago, the fight between Joe Joyce and Alexander Usyk, there were 2 takeaways from that.
From that semi-pro tournament, that Joe Joyce doesn't do well against southpaws, and that Joe Joyce, he doesn't move his head. And he's been that way for years. How do you think he developed his reputation for having a cast iron jaw? It's because people watched him take hard shots from a lot of guys like Brian Jennings, Christian Hammer, Daniel Dubois.
He was able to take the shots.
Having a cast iron chin. That's the kind of thing that works up until it doesn't. Not only Joe overlooked Zhang, even myself, I overlooked Zhang. I have to be honest, you know what I mean? He, Joyce, looked very sluggish, very basic as a fighter, but Zhang did very good. I congratulate Zhang and his team. But remember what I tell you, for the next fight, it will be different. So different.
Can it?
Well, if history is any indicator of things to come, it's hard to change a fighter from one fight to another. A fighter like Joe Joyce, least of all. It's not impossible. It can happen, though it depends. It depends on the fighter, his base style, his skill set, his habits, and how long he's had them.
Chris Eubank Jr.'s shock upset loss to Liam Smith, for example. Ahead of the rematch, I felt that Chris, he can change. He's got the tools.
But with Joe, I'm not so sure. Pressure fighters don't change much from one fight to another. All that changes is who they're fighting.
This time he fought Zhang. This time he lost.
Zhang, who beyond this weekend's rematch, he's targeting a fight with Tyson Fury. That even though this fight is for WBO interim status, he's not targeting the WBO champion. He's targeting Tyson Fury.
Not Usyk?
The 40-year-old remains fixated on Fury just days before his rerun with Joe Joyce, who will be desperate to avenge his lone loss at London's Wembley Arena on Saturday night. I was a little bit disappointed because I was very, very close to making that Tyson Fury fight happen. Right before Joe activated the rematch clause, Zhang told Sky Sports. But we had this in the contract. I had to sign the rematch clause in order to get the first fight, so I will do whatever is right, which is the rematch. Zhang's co-manager, Terry Lane, expects his client to establish himself on a 3-man list of elite heavyweights with a victory this weekend. He said, I think a win for Zhilei Zhang on Saturday really separates out the heavyweight division. If he is victorious, you really have Fury, Usyk, and Zhang on top. Everyone else will be far, far beneath.
Now, I don't know that beating Joyce makes that kind of statement. I mean, I do think Zhang is definitely top 10 in the division, but top 3?
What about Anthony Joshua? What about Andy Ruiz, Deontay Wilder?
What about Usyk?
Well, Terry Lane mentioned Usyk. Terry mentioned him being in the top 3, but I'm wondering, why are they targeting Fury instead of Usyk? Is it the money?
This is a WBO interim title fight. If Zhang takes care of business, he'll be next in the rotation for the winner of Usyk versus Hrgovic next year.
For what are 3 of the 4 major titles at the weight, so why is he eyeing Fury? Is it the money, or is it something more? We will have to sit back and see what fights get made, and perhaps more importantly, which fights do not get made. This division is just a constant game of musical chairs. Zhang, like Joyce, is an Olympic silver medalist. Anthony Joshua ended his attempts to claim a second medal at the 2012 Games, and the 25-1-1 fighter wants to avenge that defeat in the paid ranks. The option's always there. I actually lost to him in London, and I'm here again in London, so I would love to explore that option.
You could put some asses in some seats with a Joshua versus Zhang fight.
If Zhang takes care of business this weekend, he's free to go. He's not stuck at Queensberry anymore, and he could migrate back over to Matchroom to see about doing that Joshua fight. But he's got to beat Joe first. He's got to beat him one more time. Can he do it?
Well, like I said, pressure fighters don't change much from one fight to another. All that really changes is who they're fighting.
Not how they're fighting. Pressure fighters have a penchant to stay in character. Pressure fighters like Joe.
Heard something about him coming in heavier, perhaps so that there will be more weight, more behind his punches.
So wouldn't that just make him slower? Wouldn't that just slow him down? Ultimately, we won't know if that's the strategy until the weigh-in, until the day before the fight this Friday.
I don't want to underestimate Ismail Salas. He's actually one of the better trainers in the sport. Underrated, though at the same time, he's the one that admitted they underestimated Zhang. And at this age, I'm not sure that Joe can change.
His best bet is to try to take Zhang into deep waters. Try to outlast him, but if it were that easy, he would have won the first fight. Zhang's cardio is not as good as Joe's.
Joe's fundamentals, they're not as good as Zhang's.
So it's a pickle. Joe is stuck between a rock and a hard place, and the rest of his career is on the other side of this fight.
Uphill battle.